I'm going to repeat and then go into a little bit more detail on the changes we've made in the science pipelines that will go out in the next release coming up very soon. And as Mario said, most of this comes from the HSC side. What happened was that the HSC pipeline started out the same as the LSST pipeline, and they've diverged a bit over the past 2 years or so, where LSST was working on sort of longer-term plans, and HSC was working on what do we need to do right now in order to be able to reduce the new Subaru HSC data that's coming off the telescope and improve the algorithm. So the HSC code base became, in some ways, a bit more of a mess, but with much higher quality algorithms. The LSST code base got cleaned up. So those of you who've worked with the LSST code base and think it's maybe a pain to install or work with and it isn't documented very well, it could have been worse. But the algorithms over here are great. They're not where we want them to be for LSST, but they're actually doing quite a good job, I think, at this point. We'll see how it goes over the next year. We've got a lot of science we want to get out of HSC, and that'll tell us a lot about how well we're doing in the pipelines. So some of these things, we have a lot of bug fixes to the Blender, a lot of things we found were just really not working very well. I still wouldn't say that the Blender is in great shape, but it's an ambitious algorithm, and it's doing better than I think certainly anyone who runs source extractor on their own machine. It's vastly better than that. It's getting close to being comparable with the SDSS to Blender, even though I think it has a somewhat harder problem than the SDSS to Blender because we have multiple epochs. I think it might be somewhat comparable to what the people in the dark energy survey are doing right now with the sort of next release of source extractor that no one else has seen yet. We have a Galaxy model fitting for photometry. We've improved that quite a bit. It's still not where it's going to be for LSST, of course, but it's something I think you can now use to get colors fairly reliably. We've made some big improvements to the PSF modeling. A lot of this was just sort of parameter tuning. We've also adopted this external PSFX code. I think this is getting close to about how well you can do PSF modeling as long as you're just modeling one CCD at a time. Eventually we have more ambitious plans to model entire focal planes at once and use information possibly from multiple focal planes and wavefront sensors and so on. But if you're looking at just a CCD, which is all anyone does right now for the most part, this is, I think, about as good as you can get. We also Coed these PSFs when we make Coeds, and that gives us probably the best PSF control on Coeds that I think anyone in the world is doing right now. We've added a new mode of artifact rejection in Coedition. How do you get rid of satellite trails and glints and ghosts in Coeds? Ideally, what you'd want to do is run difference imaging, find all the artifacts there somehow, and then include those as masks in the Coedition. That's much safer than doing a median Coed or an outlier, a sigma clipped outlier rejected Coed. Both of those things will mess up the PSF on the Coed, and so what we're doing instead is we're doing a sigma clipped Coed. We're comparing that to a Coed that isn't sigma clipped. We're using that to find regions. We're going back to the individual frames, trying to find those artifacts, and then masking them out of the Coed. And that's actually giving us a very high quality Coed in terms of control of knowing exactly what went into every pixel and what the PSF is at every pixel. Now sometimes obviously the PSF isn't even well defined because you've added up one group of pixels in one area, a different group of pixels next to it. But we can mask those areas, we can remove them from the processing, and we have a very good PSF model for everything that remains. The thing I'm going to talk the most about today is this consistent multiband Coed processing. And this is something that's been missing for people who really wanted to use the stack to do science, was our ability to measure good colors. And this, I think, gives us the ability to measure colors even on blended sources, as long as they're not too crazy blended. So, how this works. We have multiple different bands. I'm demonstrating how we've been running this on the HSC, so you'll notice that there's no U band. We detect each, so we'll detect, merge, deblend, and then do force photometry. I'll go through each of these steps in a moment. The bottom line here is that what we do is we produce a single consistent catalog that has detections from all bands. There's no more idea of here's a detection from the R-band Coed, here's a catalog from the I-band Coed, here's a catalog from the Z-band Coed. It's all one catalog that's consistent. And we can now do force spectrometry on Coeds in a way that uses the information that comes out of the blender. So even if your sources are blended, we can still get good force spectrometry and hence good colors. So we start out, we just detect separately on each of the coeds. This gives us a set of above threshold regions and peaks within those regions. Then we merge them across bands. We say if there's a footprint here in R and a footprint here in I, we take the union of them. All the peaks within them, we try to identify peaks that are the same and not peaks that are different. And now we have essentially a consistent preliminary catalog that just has sort of rough positions for all the sources. At the next stage, we deblend and measure separately in every band, using all of those peaks that we've already identified as consistent across all the bands. Now this is a little bit tricky because we're running a deblender here that was designed to only run a single epoch, and it was used in the past. It was accustomed to being able to throw away peaks that didn't make any sense. For instance, if you have a dropout, it's not going to appear in some bands, but there's still going to be a peak in some band. So we're sort of forcing the deblender to do something it doesn't want to do right now, which is deblend a peak that doesn't exist in that band. It's not the best scenario, and of course we intend to improve this so that the deblending across different bands actually knows a little bit about what it's trying to deal with. But this is working pretty well as it is right now, certainly much better than anything we've had before. We then measure separately at every band. These are completely independent measurements in every band, but on a consistent set of objects. We then select the reference band. This is similar to what SDSS did. If an object was detected in the I band, we use the I band measurement. If it was detected in the R band, we use the R band measurement, so on, until we have some sort of measurement that we consider canonical for every band. We haven't determined what the order of priority is for LSST, or even if we will need a priority order, we'll probably need something like that. With these reference measurements, then we can go do force photometry. Now, force photometry means you do a measurement while holding something fixed, usually at least the centroid position, sometimes also an aperture or galaxy model parameters, and only allowing the amplitude to vary. And that gives you a consistent measure of flux across different bands, which is what we call color. There are some subtle details to how you do this. This may not be the best way to do colors. I think formally it's only accurate. It's only correct if your models are also accurate, and models for galaxies are never perfect. But this seems to be working fairly well. It's certainly the only thing this is the first time we would actually say this is good enough, it's worth trying to see how well it does. Before this, we knew we were doing something that didn't work. And because we have a consistent catalog of objects in all the bands, we've deblended back here. We can use this same deblending information we have here to do the forced measurements. And that's a really critical step, especially for surveys like HSC and LSST, where we're going so deep that essentially everything is going to be blended, or a large fraction of everything is going to be blended. So here's what that looks like. This is an HSC image. The blue are the areas that were detected in I-band, and green is what you get after you merge all the detections. So you can see the green area extends a little bit beyond the blue. You can see some green things over here that were detected in I-band that were detected in other bands. So as I flip through these, you can see all the different bands. You can see there's somewhat less detected in R than in I, and hence the green area is a little bit larger than the blue area. You can also see that there's some interesting points here where we've detected something in one band. You see these little blue markers there, I don't know how well you can see them, that were not ended up in the merged catalog. And that's because at the moment, we're not actually keeping everything that we merged together. We've found that there's a lot of little bits of fluff on the edges of large blends. And at the moment, we're playing some games to try to reject those based somewhat on whether there are lots and lots of peaks in that blend, and based somewhat on whether there are multiple bands, whether the peak is detected in multiple bands. So if the peak is detected in multiple bands, we never throw it away. And if it's detected only in one band, and there also isn't a whole lot else going on, we keep it as well. And that will, of course, get rid of some dropouts in clusters of bright things. We don't plan to do this forever. There's better ways to deal with this, but it removes a lot of extra processing time in particular, because these little bits of fluff can actually have models that extend over the whole cluster because the deblending goes bad, and that ends up taking a huge amount of time. So we know we're losing a little bit here, and that's something we plan to fix in the future, but it's again a big step forward.
Just to cover, how deep are these images compared to LSST?
This is the Coed, isn't it?
This is a Coed, but I can't remember if it's a Coed of the deep area or of a wide field area.
4 to 30 minutes.
So it's like 26 at least.
Yeah, at least. It might be actually quite a bit deeper than that. I can't remember what part of the sky floats from, which is good, because otherwise I probably wouldn't be able to show it to you. That's actually all I've got. I can take a few questions before our next hour.
I can ask a silly question.
Sure.
I've noticed that often the footprints are diamond shaped or square shaped. If you look at isolated.
Yeah, I can see this one here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And with sides along the diagonal, what is that? It seems like some funny way of the way the footprints are grown. There's a sense of diagonalization.
It's not the way the footprints are going. I know what you're thinking about, and it's not that, because we've changed that.
It's a detail, of course.
Yeah, it might be related to correlated noise versus the kernel book involving the image of before we detect. Or we might just imagining that it's there versus other shapes. I mean, clearly it is, a few things look diamond shaped, but I don't know if it's more systematically diamond shaped than round. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Jim.